Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Subtext Podcast Archives. These are the long-lost episodes of the Subtext that were originally produced between 2015 and 2017. In 2018, the Subtext moved to American Theater Magazine, and we've been producing the pod there monthly ever since. These time capsules are being shared here in their entirety, including plenty of outdated references and advertisements for events far in the past. If you enjoy them, please subscribe to the current podcast feed for the Subtext or stream new episodes on the website for American Theater Magazine. Thank you for listening.
I know I'm not alone, but still, I don't know what to do. I feel lost. I feel powerless. I hear the chants, resist, persist, and I chant along, but I'm a writer and I need to write something. My problem is everything feels frivolous. My plays of personal introspection, of only moderate interest to the world to begin with, now seem beyond cute. They're revoltingly unimportant. Everything else in the world has become important, all at the same time. There are so many things that matter so much, and all at once. It is almost as if no one thing can matter for more than a minute because, look out, this new thing just happened and we have to protest in the streets. It's like a choking London fog. I can't breathe, so I hold my breath. But I can only hold my breath for so long. When will this end, and when can I have a second to think because I need to think to write, and I need to write to think? My brain is broken. I'm searching for a real practical idea to cope. There are only so many animal videos I can watch to escape, and escaping seems as unhealthy as holding my breath, so here's what I'm doing. I'm applying a new standard to my work, and perhaps a standard like this is what I should have had all along. I must write what's necessary. I must write meaningful work. I must write for more than my own precious broken soul. I'm going to write more than my next great play to send around hoping for that one big break. I'm going to create work that might, even in the slightest way, impact change. Perhaps that change will be infinitesimal. Perhaps I can impact only one person, but that is a high enough bar for me to get started. Change, any change, is progress, and progress is progress. And progress means moving forward out of the fog. And maybe if I do this enough, move forward enough, breathing will be easier, the riots will diminish, the chants will grow quieter, and then I won't feel lost anymore. Welcome to episode 21 of The Subtext. This month I am talking with Zakiyyah Alexander, a playwright, TV writer, actor, teacher, and all-around awesome influence on the American theater. Before we get to the interview, I want to thank those of you who have emailed and social media'd about our podcast. It means a lot to know that what we're doing is landing with people out there in the world. We are sort of a niche since we are hyper-focused on playwrights and playwriting, but I'm glad to know there are enough of you interested to bump us into the podcast charts from time to time. As always, if you feel so inclined, please go to iTunes and leave us a comment or a ranking or whatever it is they call it there. And if you have something you want to say to us directly, find us on the Twitters at Subtext Podcast or send us an email, thesubtextpodcast@gmail.com. Of course, by us, I really mean me, but you probably knew that. Okay, here we go. On to the interview with Zakiyyah Alexander. No?
Not even. What do I say? Sometimes I can sell a song if I really had to. If you paid me.
Yeah.
But there's no, or if I was like 6 drinks in, which rarely happens.
Really?
Yeah.
Somehow the voice gets better 6 drinks in.
No, what I used to do when I was a drinker, for real when I was younger, if I got drunk, a certain amount of drunk, I could rap.
Oh, yeah?
But only.
Was it your actual ability would
yeah, it would appear.
Would manifest?
It was also my bravado, probably more than anything else.
Right.
My confidence level was really high. Like the same way I would talk shit before I played pool.
Well,
like it's
I
not
would
real.
say a significant amount of rap is confidence, right? I guess a significant amount of doing anything well is confidence.
Yeah. Confidence to be like, I'm just going to spit a rhyme.
Yeah.
Which is not really.
I like the idea that you suddenly have, it's like superpowers. Like you actually get these powers you don't have if you get really hammered.
Yeah. Once I was stoned in Italy and I understood Italian. So like it's like weird, like like everything aligns. I was like, I understand what people are saying.
Wow, this is magical.
Why isn't everyone do drugs and drink?
Yeah, no kidding. Yeah, this is a good sort of like PSA for drugs and alcohol.
Yes.
The more you know.
The more you can still be successful.
We have a language warning attached to the podcast in case anybody says fuck.
Oh, really?
But I think we now need one for like drugs and alcohol.
Just like a full
for promoting drug use. Caution children.
Well, at least this doesn't go against your morals like Kellyanne Conway.
Right.
Like we're not really actually selling anything bad.
Right.
How's your writing going?
You know, it's okay.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm having a real tough period right now because of the world. So
I had big writer's block for a while.
Yeah, I've really been struggling, and I had this sort of like I went to Poland in December for a few weeks to work on a project and to attend a theater festival. And
were you in Krakow?
I was in Krakow for Boska Komedia, if you know that festival. And so I spent 11 days in Krakow, and I saw like 20 theater productions, mostly Polish theater productions. And while that was happening, the election had just happened, and I wasn't following the news as intently as I do at home, just because my access to social media and my computer was not the same. But Aleppo was falling essentially while I was there, and I went and saw a production that was it wasn't about Aleppo, but it was about a group of refugees. And it just really had me thinking long and hard about what I'm writing.
Yeah. Hard to be like, hey, how's that Starbucks drink?
Yeah.
What about romance and life? And
I know. And it's funny you ask because when on these podcasts, like whoever's listening up to the point where we're talking right now will have heard my introduction, which I haven't recorded yet.
Yeah.
But I record after we're done, and it's about what we're talking about, ironically enough. It's about me, like what I'm writing about now and how it is hard to write in the fog of what's going on.
It's super hard.
Yeah.
It's super hard. It's also, I think, for me, I was like, how does my writing not become like a PSA?
Yeah.
How do I not get so on the nose that there's no more play?
Right.
It's just sort of like a moral sort of a thing. Which is not theatrical, like the opposite of theatricality. And I almost feel like lecturing at this point because I'm like, we need to wake up. But then it's like, who's going to watch that play?
Right.
Who's going to produce that play? Who's going to watch that play? Who's going to be the audience for that play? And that becomes really, complicated.
I was just having this conversation with a friend of mine last night who's working on a documentary. He's a journalist, and he's struggling with this documentary he's working on because he says it feels a little bit like preaching. It's just like it's just telling you what is bad, right?
Yeah.
And so he's struggling with the person who has hired him. Essentially, he's like the executive producer who had the idea for this documentary, and because he has a strong point of view.
Yeah.
So he wants this documentary created to sort of thrust his point of view onto an audience. And so my friend who's working on it is like, I don't want it to just be preaching, and a documentary shouldn't just be a good documentary shouldn't just be preaching
it's got
at
different
you.
points of view.
Yeah.
It's this is a barren time. So
How is it impacting your writing?
I had a little commission for EST in New York, and I sort of thought I was going to work on this play, which is going to be my trilogy, because I feel like everyone needs a trilogy. It's my big joke right now, is that every playwright has a trilogy. And I have a play called Sick, and this about someone who thinks that they're dying and doesn't have health insurance. And I wanted to do a second play called Wellness or something, maybe Well. And it really was about getting healthy and sort of this next age for this character. And I was placing her in Los Angeles. And it's an interesting play, but it just was there was no substance in there if the world was coming to sort of this grinding halt.
Yeah.
And I didn't want to talk about driving in Los Angeles.
Right, yeah.
Which I think is funny and sort of the play is still sort of valid, but I just couldn't bring myself to work on it. So I kind of had to force myself to write because I was late on my deadline. My deadline was December 1st, and I was ready to start writing in like November, and then was like, oh no, I can't.
So did you not start until the election already happened, essentially?
I was late.
Yeah, okay. Don't want to reveal.
wasn't so ahead of the schedule.
Right,
but
I gotcha.
I was sort of, it was a shorter play. It was like a 30-page play. So I was just going to crack it out really quickly. And I had a play that I was working on. So I thought I would sort of combine it. But then it was the pre-election and the election kind of got me to like a whole different place. And I just sort of, I hadn't been playwriting anyway. And I also think that's sort of a muscle if you're not writing all the time. I always say if I haven't written in a few months, it's basically like I've never written before. I'm a fresh writer who's no idea what they're doing. The muscle like atrophies very quickly for me. So I had already been hesitant about what this play was going to be. But the election sort of really made me struggle. And I kind of knew the substance of what I was going to talk about, but I couldn't figure out a way to talk about it in a way that felt like play, that felt like, here, audience, I'd like you to enjoy yourselves, and not just sort of the intense emotional feeling that I had was not an enjoyable place to put someone for 2 hours or for 30 minutes. So I did figure it out. I figured out the one piece, which is called The Good Muslim. But I know that I wouldn't have written that particular play had I not sort of been forced to. And I think I had like 7 drafts of trying to crack it, of like sort of knowing what it was and going in all these different directions to try to get to the play, to get something that felt like I'm comfortable sharing this at this particular time. So it is a question. I think it's a question about what we're writing. But I've been thinking, what were people writing during World War II? You know,
what was your relationship? What was the relationship between your writing and politics before 2016?
I'm sort of a satirical writer to a certain extent. I think I'm a drama writer, but I live in a sort of a dark comedy kind of a place where ideally for my plays, they comment on something that I'm sort of struggling with in the world. I kind of want to make you laugh a lot and then make you cry so that you are surprised that there's something else underneath it. So my plays really have always kind of lived in the conflicts I had with the world and the questions I sort of have. An older play of mine called The Etymology of Bird is super relevant. It's about a young teenage boy who's black, who's 16, who lives in the projects in Brooklyn. He wants to be a rapper. He's sort of got everything's going his way, you think, and then he gets shot by the cops. And that play was based on a real story of someone who was killed many years ago, and it just becomes more and more relevant. So that play is maybe 8 years old, but feels like today.
Yeah.
I have another play called You Are Here. It's about a Muslim family that sort of gets profiled by these super American people. That could have been written today.
When did you write it?
Like 5 years ago.
Does it make you, how do you feel knowing that you wrote something that you might not, and I'm putting this on you, maybe you didn't think this, but at the time you may not have thought that this is going to be a timeless piece of dramatic work.
Oh, I think I did.
You did?
I think I did.
Because I look at it and I think I get sad and depressed thinking that, oh my God, is this play, not that I don't want your work to be relevant in 20 years, you know, But I would love this idea to become irrelevant, and I get sucked into like a pit of depression thinking about it.
It's hard because I guess I am not here to be an optimist. I'm not really here to sort of think about what would be ideal. I think I'm really practical, steeped in a little bit of pessimism. And that makes me think, I was raised Muslim. My parents were more hippies than anything else, super American, but had changed their religion and changed their names several times. To give you an idea of how far it is, my grandparents' names are like Virginia and Alex.
Okay.
And I'm Zakiyyah. And so there was so much Muslim stuff that was happening back when I was like a kid. People would call us on the phone book and curse us out because of the name. And that was before anything was really sort of radicalized. Like that was just sort of like the world of no, but it wasn't really. There was no violence. There was just sort of an aggression towards the religion.
Yeah.
I don't think that's ever gone away. And I'm not Muslim by culture, where like there's a double-edged sword. I can sort of see it as an American, what's sort of happening and how much it affects or doesn't affect me. But I can't imagine this is gonna end. I feel like the play is good for 20 years, for sure. The play is good for 20 years. We've progressed so little. Racially, we're very. I think that this time period is making me so aware of how little we've progressed, and I've been thinking about how really we kind of got here because we had a black president.
Yeah.
Like we kind of got here because there was like an educated black man in charge, and so it took 8 years of like whatever that sort of anger and hostility that there was this educated upper middle class black man while there were welders without work. Right. That scar tissue built up until we kind of got here. So for here, which is sort of like where we were really throughout all of historical American times, I can't imagine we will like overcome the Muslim issue.
And I guess it's sort of ignorant of me to even think that, because you look back and Arthur Miller wrote The Crucible, right?
Yeah.
That's going to be relevant till the end of time.
Yeah.
A Raisin in the Sun is just as relevant now as it was when she wrote it.
Yeah.
50 years ago.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Progression's small. But I mean, I think the play part of it is to do the reflections of what's happening. As opposed to, I kind of think movies are more fantastical, like what we hope will happen. I think it's often a movie scope. And I think theater, sometimes the best theater for me is actually a little bit more reflective of like, this is where we are. And maybe for me, because I think I do live in a satirist world, it's sort of, the question always is like, and now what? How do we get here? What's next? So if we get here and it's kind of funny and it's kind of sad, I think the challenge is the satire. A good satire is sort of like, is this what you want for things to be?
So I want to go back. Were you born Muslim, or did your family become Muslim after when you were a child?
Like the story is this is sad that I wasn't famous to be on the David Letterman show. My parents went to Bennington, which I feel like explains it a lot, and they were like the only black people at Bennington.
I think anybody. I'm from New Hampshire. Okay? I'm from New England, and I'm very familiar with Bennington. And so I think anybody who's familiar with Bennington, you could just stop.
Yes. Yeah.
But I do think there are a lot of people who might need some more context.
Yeah, that's generally how I place it often. I was like, they were at Bennington.
Pause.
Yeah, they were black at Bennington, where there was almost just them. And they first changed their names. They sort of radicalized a little bit. And they were born Roslyn and Jodine. And they changed their names to my mother became Ray, and my father became Ojende, and then they had me, and they named me Ife Tayo Nombatemba. So Ojende and Ray Nombatemba had Ife Tayo Nombatemba, much to the chagrin of Fanny and Virginia, my grandparents, and Joe and Herman. who couldn't pronounce my name of their first grandchild. Then when I was a year old, they converted to Islam and changed their names to Ihsan and Isla Abdul Rahim, and changed my name, although not legally, we later found out, to Zakiyyah Abdul Rahim.
So when did you find out that it wasn't legally changed?
When I tried to get my passport.
How old were you?
17.
Wow.
17, was I 17? No, maybe I was 19. I was 19. I was in college. I was 19. I was getting my passport, and my mother realized that she had just changed it, but had not done it for real. So then I had to go to the Social Security office and show that my school reports I had all these different names. So then, and still, because I haven't legally changed my name back to Alexander, it's been professional for 15 years, but I haven't legally changed it because I'm lazy. So, but my passport, and the reason why I know all the issues of what it looks like to be from another country, even if, in fact, you are from New York, my legal name is Zakiyyah Ifetayo Abdul Rahim.
I love that you had to pause and think for a second.
I did,
Wait, what is my name again?
I never use it. It's funny because someone the other day asked me for ID, and she said, "Are you Muslim?" And I had this brief, no one's really asked me that, and I had this brief sort of pause where I had to figure out what my response was, and the loaded situation that we're in today, which made me have this extra pause, and it's a weird thing that I'm involved in because it actually isn't culturally my thing. It's just sort of my weird hippie parents' baggage. But it sort of definitely has shown me sort of what it looks like to be considered trouble.
Well, where were you? Where'd you grow up?
I grew up in New York.
City, state?
I grew up in the city. I grew up in Queens and Brooklyn. I've been always doing theater as from a child. So I'm a complete New Yorker, which is why I took a lift here.
There was no subway stop here in Atwater Village. What's going on?
No, I had a brief moment where I was like, maybe I should drive. No.
Right. Okay, so parents graduate from Bennington or whatever, have you, and convert to Islam. You're growing up in the city. How does your relationship to theater manifest?
My father was an acting teacher, and my father, they put me in his acting classes because it was cheaper than babysitting. They didn't have money for babysitting, so I just took acting classes from as a kid with adults. So I took older acting classes when I was 8 or 9, and then when I went to Performing Arts High School, I was auditioning. I was already acting by the time I was 9. I was pretty out and about doing. Not television work, but doing theater stuff. And then I went to Performing Arts High School. And when I was there was a sign someplace. There was a little poster for the Young Playwrights contest. And it said, every play will get a professional critique. So I remember I pulled that off the thing and took it home. And I wrote a play on my parents' electric typewriter. And I sent it off. I sent the one copy that I had off. And I came in second place with that play. And then I was a playwright, weirdly, at 16.
Was it a switch flipped? Or did you just not actor, now just playwright?
No,
or were
I
you,
actually wanted to be both. I still think I'm both, but I got over the idea of presenting as an actor, and I felt like there was no power in being an actor. And also the tricky thing about me for acting was that I was getting cast as an ingenue, and I'm not an ingenue. I'm a character actor, and so I didn't know how to be normal. And not I was better with a tick or a limp or something, or some sort of something that felt like story. And I don't know how to be a normal person, so I can't play one well. So I kind of knew that I wasn't as interested in the stuff that was even around, and there were so little things. I was often, I think my favorite memory of being a young actor was I was cast in a reading of a film that was gonna have a public reading at Lincoln Center, and I almost got fired because I wasn't tough enough. They were we like her, but she's not street. And my mom sat me down at the kitchen table and taught me how to curse properly, and was don't hit the ka on fuck. Fuck. Shit.
Well, did they cast you because it's like, oh, this black girl will be tough because she's a...
No, they didn't think I was. They cast me because I was a child actor.
Okay.
But then they were like, she's not tough enough when I was doing it. And so my mom had to teach me how to curse, like from the hood.
It's funny that, I grew up in the quiet woods of New Hampshire learning how to curse at like age 7.
But did you curse like you were tough, or did they?
Oh, yeah, I was the toughest. I was the toughest fucking 7-year-old you ever knew.
Guys, that was like, all of my curses sounded like a proper kid, I think. Sounded like a kid who isn't supposed to be cursing, who only curses when nobody can hear you.
Right.
And so I felt like I remember being a little titillated by saying bad words.
Yeah.
So to actually be like the kind of kid who would curse out an adult, that was the character. And I just wasn't that person.
Oh, yeah, right.
So, but my mom taught me how to be that person.
Yeah.
So.
It's great. The lessons that you have, that your parents teach you growing up. There's a proper way to curse. I love that. So did you have have you had acting roles that you felt were perfectly matched for who you saw yourself as an actor?
I think probably the best part I ever played was one of the parts in Polaroid Stories when I was in grad school. But it's probably because of all those same things. It was like it was a crazy character part in a weird world that was sort of like the streets, but also sort of Greek mythology. And it was like, oh, this is a perfect part for me.
Yeah.
So I don't know if I think I did some good parts, but I don't think I played the parts that I don't think I knew who I was as an actor yet to really be like, this is the role of a lifetime. I think it was still the place where you were still just kind of hustling and just trying to work. So it felt less sort of, this is who I am and this is like my best work, and more like, oh, am I going to get cast? I want to work. And that kind of dissipated a little bit because I didn't feel like I could be a playwright and an actor. I needed some stability in my life. And I like to have money, like a job. And I knew that I just am not a solid enough person to know that, to be like, whatever happens next, I'll figure it out. And I'm not a good waiter. So like those things, I would have been I was a bartender for a while. I was a better bartender, but I didn't have the skills necessary to really take care of yourself to maintain for the work. Whatever that sort of acting stuff is, I don't have it as much.
Yeah, but you knew how to say fuck. And that's an important skill for a bartender.
I think just my New York attitude was enough for my bartending.
Yeah.
It was really more than my skill was my jokes.
So you are an actor. I don't know why I'm stumbling over this because this is not a complicated question. You're both an actor and a playwright.
Yeah.
I know you as a playwright.
Yeah.
And you said that you tend not to present yourself as an actor. Is there a moment where you just started to like drift away from, or have you, or are you still acting?
No, I'm not acting. I think I'm gonna act for the right part. I have a feeling that I'm gonna wind up acting if I like have my own television show or something, and then I wouldn't be the lead. I would just want a small, like 4th string part on it. So
the bartender,
right? Like just to come in. So I don't have the strong desire to. There's so much trouble ahead for the writing world that I just can't put myself into both of those. Has this been just a slow sort of evolution for you, or was there a moment where you're like, you know what, I really got to focus on? No, it's been slow. I went to Yale for grad school, and I kind of came out, and I remember I had to choose you could only apply for one discipline. So I think it probably began there, and I was like, oh, I think I would, if I could only choose one, I'd rather do the playwriting because I think I can act, but I would like some playwriting support. And now I feel like I might write a one-person show that's sort of been on the table for a while, and I'm kind of excited about it, but it also feels super lonely and super like, why would I spend years working on something and then perform it and then go home by myself? Like the whole thing feels like such an act of philanthropy and not sort of necessarily that much fun to me. But there will be a time probably when there's something I really want to do, and then that's it. Like I really want this part. Actually, I really want to be in one of Sheila Callahan's plays. Like like something like that, like something that's sort of like a once and a one-off I would like, but I don't actually want to be working.
Well, I mean,
time.
if I am a not an unsuccessful actor, but I dabbled, I tried, and it's just not a skill set I have.
Yeah.
I too would like to be in a Sheila
Sure.
Callahan play, so we should send this to Sheila and ask her to write a play that we could be in.
Amateur play.
Right, yeah. Don't give me a lot of dialogue. I'm really good at just like responding with my face. Don't give me any words.
That's good. That's like, you'd be good in film.
Yeah. I often say that the extent of my acting dream is to be Gunther on Friends
Oh, that's
in
good.
the coffee shop.
I
Just
mean-
let me be in the background making lattes, and like every 10th episode I get a line. That's I'd be happy
you
there.
get paid good money,
Yeah.
Gunther. I'm positive that Gunther is not unhappy.
I hope I'm considered if there's a Friends reboot.
We all hope that.
So leading up to this moment where you were decided to go to grad school, you were acting, you were writing.
I was in college.
Yeah.
I went straight. I was sort of a really weird person who always knew what they wanted to do from a very, very young age. And so I sort of had a very clear kind of path set up for myself. I went to Binghamton for undergrad. I went there specifically because I thought I was going to go to a conservatory for acting, and I got scared that I wouldn't be able to do anything else. So I went to Binghamton. And then from there, at 21, I went to grad school to be a playwright, which is, I think, I would say never do that. But I did that. And I was like a frustrated person because I was
Why
young.
would you recommend people not do that?
I would say it's probably really important, even just management-wise, to know why you're going to grad school, what you're looking at it for. I think grad school, when I look at it now in retrospect, especially the kind of ways things are playing out with classism for theater right this particular second, grad school is more of, I think, your ticket into an industry more than educational at this point. So I think if I had known that I should go and schmooze and come out with an agent and like really do some specific sort of networking work, I think that's when grad school and my watching other people do it more savvier than me, that's really the trick of it. I kind of went and was like, teach me. I need I need to be challenged. Where's the work? And everyone was like, why are you so crazy? And it's because I was just young and I was like a student. And I think if I had taken some time off, I would have been like, oh, I only have 3 classes a week. I'm free to write and like figure out stuff. But I was like, why? Why isn't there more? Why don't we have longer plays? Give us productions. And I think I just had put a lot of the energy in the wrong place because I just didn't know what it meant.
Because you didn't have that gap. You came from going to undergrad and probably being I'm just guessing an achieving undergrad. Like you did all your homework, you went to your classes.
I don't know if it was that, but I was very good at that stuff that I knew I was good at.
Yeah.
So I was a very good theater person.
I guess the
always.
word is not overachieving, but motivated.
Yeah, I knew what I wanted, and I was very clear about the thing, but I wasn't clear about... I think I was even clear about what I wanted artistically. I just didn't realize that this was a professional moment, that this was a moment to sort of go, oh, wait, is y'all going to produce me later?
Right.
Who can I meet? Who can I make them, like, introduce me to? Should I get an agent before I leave? I was just, like...
Yeah. No, I
21.
completely understand. I went to grad school at 37.
Oh, so that's like a whole...
Yeah,
You know why you're there.
I didn't start writing until I was like 32. So
yeah.
I'm a late bloomer, but I had that sort of like perspective going in where I wanted to learn and I knew I was going to learn. But I had the sort of like I was also working in theater as a day job and I understood how the profession worked.
Yep.
And in the school with me, there were other people, and some of them were straight out of undergrad.
Yep.
And when you're with them,
Yep.
Day to day for your 3-year program, you really see the difference in how by the time they get out is the time they should be going in.
Yes.
Like
that was me.
that's the amount of time that needed to pass. And you're like, now you're ready.
Yep.
Now you're going to be awesome if you go.
Yep.
Yeah.
Because now you can utilize why you're there. And I really was like, I also think there was another sort of element of Yale for me. I think I was like the third black female playwright or something.
Ever?
I might have been number 4. I forget. Lynn Nottage was like 1.
Wow.
I think so. So, and I, as a New Yorker, as a person who had done theater in New York, really lived in a diverse, different kind of a world where the theater kids are very diverse. Theater kids who are making theater as children are not sort of like one particular race. And Binghamton was the beginning of like, oh, different people of different races sit at different tables here, right? And then Yale, at that particular point in time, it's begun to change the drama school, but that particular makeup was sort of very easily, you could see the racialized makeup. Like the acting class is like 18 kids, but there was like 1 black acting kid, 1 black girl, like 2 Asian people, 1 Filipino person who'd play every race. Like, so it was a very sort of clear sort of setup makeup. All the other playwrights, most of the playwrights were white in general. And so there was a question when I got in there, what was going to be my black play. And I had not been a black playwright before I went to Yale. I had just been a writer. And that was sort of the first time that it was super projected on to me, like how important it was, what was I going to be doing, what was that sort of conversation, that necessary conversation that everybody was super excited to have was all like projected onto me.
Did you agree with any of it?
Oh, I mean, my first play was it was very similar actually to Neighbors. It was like I feel like that's the grad school play for like the black person where it was blackface and whiteface. It was like, there was a minstrel show. There was a play within a play. There was like the end was like they were hanging the nigger who was sort of like a Sambo character who had a Shirley Temple. It was a Bojangles, Shirley Temple kind of a coupling. And they wind up killing this character at the end and everyone's killing him, and then they dance and sang now we see a smile on your face while they're lynching somebody. So this was like a crazy moment and there was almost a boycott and people were like, everyone was in tears, and it was this crazy moment where I sort of realized it was actually the most important critical lesson I had as a playwright, because this whole intense situation, which was even more intense than I will even go into, sort of taught me the power of where we were racially and how basically we haven't really healed any of our racial scars. So if I bring you like blackface, you are going to have an emotional reaction to it for the most part. You'll definitely have it if you're black. You will probably be uncomfortable if you're white. And it'll color anything that comes from the text, whether or not you can enjoy it or what that sort of means or what that feeling is in the space. And that is a crazy bit of magic power to sort of have and know what to do with and know. It's why Neighbors worked. It's sort of the same thing. It's like if we're bringing race into a space where we have never spoken about race at all.
Yeah.
Because we rarely do. It does something.
I remember when I saw Neighbors and the end happens. And I don't know, I've never read the script.
Me either.
So I don't know if this was a function of the production or a function of Brandon's writing, but the ending just knocked the shit out of me.
What's the ending again?
The entire cast comes all the way downstage and stares at the audience.
So the reason why I think it's funny, that's basically how my play ended in grad school. The end of my play is everybody in blackface stopped, took off like their wigs, looks at the audience, and then they sing a song directly to the audience.
Yeah.
And the song is like, Shake Your Blues Away. But in blackface, dramatic. So it's this, I mean, it's not, we're different plays, but it's very similar.
In Neighbors, he or the production, again, I'm not sure if it was the playwright or the production, completely implicates us in everything that we just witnessed.
Yeah.
The whiteface, the blackface, the minstrel show, all of it. They just stand there and stare at you for an ungodly amount of time.
Yeah.
And no dialogue. And eventually they walk away. There's no curtain call. There's offstage talking that you can't really, it's mostly inaudible. and that's how the play ends, and it kind of knocked me out.
Yeah.
I had never felt so implicated in this. I had never felt in the theater, I should say. In life, I absolutely have felt this way, but in the theater, I have never felt so much a white man.
Yeah.
And it was devastating in a positive way, in a wonderful, amazing way, and has been with me ever since. You know, and I find it so interesting that these two plays. What was the name of your play?
After the show.
So After the Show and Neighbors, these two plays written by two extremely different people,
Different years, like different. Like I was in grad school before.
without awareness of each other.
Well, but I think it's this though.
But the play, like you weren't aware. Were you aware of Neighbors when you wrote yours?
No, I was way before. It was closer to like that Spike Lee movie. But I have to say, and no shade about Neighbors, I just think that play is an early play of his, and that play is an early play of mine. I think it's what happens if you're a Black American person as a playwright suddenly confronting race for your first time.
I find it interesting that this is where the two of you went.
Yeah.
Right. You created two plays that were very similar in tone and theme and structure.
Probably mine was more aggressive in the sense that it was like this otherworldly time. It wasn't a sort of contemporary play. It was supposed to be this place that had sort of time had stopped, and all the Black people were Black comedy and all the white people were white tragedy. So everybody was in blackface, was really funny, and all the white people were like super bad, like the other extremes of sort of playing with what race looks like. And then in the second act, everybody came in face. So the first act, nobody's in makeup except for Bojangles and Shirley Temple, and then at the end, everybody, and you realize nothing's real. We're all kind of caricatures. But the other part that was really sort of important in that experience was that I realized that whiteface isn't anything, that there's actually no way that you can offend. There's no face that you can put on that sort of actually affects whiteness. There's no poke that you can do because there's not a mask. It's more, for whiteness, we can poke with class. We could be like, you're a Polak, you're a, I don't know, some other bad word for not being American.
Right.
Or you're a redneck, you don't have money. But there's not an overwhelming, like, middle class, like, what can I do to sort of be like...
No, I mean, you can... the closest you can get is you can offend one person by going orange face. But you're only going to get him.
Yes.
Nobody else is going to be offended by that.
No, and there's no way. It's just not... It's not the same. So, like, yellowface has a thing.
Oh, right.
Blackface has a thing. But there's no...
Yeah.
You can't hang it. And so there's this... It's weird. There's, like, what's the face of whiteface?
Yeah, there's no such thing.
Yeah. Like, if I put a blackface thing where everybody's going to have some kind of reaction. And you won't the other way. You won't be the same. It'll be, like, curious, but it won't be like... Is that me? Are you making fun of me?
So if that was an early play for you, you wrote that in grad school, how has your work evolved to, say, the play that you're doing with Ammunition Theater next month?
I think I'm more efficient. I think as a writer, I'm a bit more efficient with what I'm trying to do. And I can speak about it and sort of look at it and sort of go, this was the specific intention. For the play I'm doing with Ammunition Theater, How to Raise a Free Man, it actually started because I saw a reading of a play in Los Angeles that I didn't like. And it was someone trying to deal in some way with sort of police violence and black kids, but I thought it felt so overly wrought and had no connection for me, and I knew I could do it better. So that was the impulse. I guess the difference in the way that I approach plays is probably the bigger difference. It's that I kind of know what I'm trying to do. And I think when I was younger, I just found myself in the midst of something and tried to handle it. And tried to, like, I have 60 pages. Let me try to make this make sense in some way, or maybe add a structure onto it. And now I'm definitely driving the car when I'm writing. I definitely know generally if I'm in a good place, I know what I want.
In relation to content, you said when you were in grad school, they put upon you to write black plays, or I can't remember how you.
Because it was more the conversation of like, what will you be doing as a black writer?
Right.
Like, what does that mean in terms of like, what will you be presenting from your work?
Right. And did that send you on a certain trajectory?
No, I think that's why the blackface thing happened, because I was angry about that, and I was like, so if we're going to talk about race, then we're going to talk about race.
Right.
But then, unfortunately, this is also the naivete of being like 22. I cast, Yale Small. I cast basically every black person in the school almost, and put them in blackface. So I cast all these actors who had done all this work to be at Yale, and I put them in blackface in front of an all-white department, all-white faculty, all-white department. So the levels were so interesting that I wasn't aware of what it sort of looked like. But I did that as a reaction to, well, then I'm the black playwright, then I'm going to give you the blackest play that I possibly can.
And what was the response to your essentially white audience?
So I think it was very heavy-handed. One, I think people were super emotional because it was super, first of all, like far out for there was a lot of controversy involved in it too. Someone had dropped out for a moment. People were like, Zakiyyah's going to have to play the lead part because like an actor's not going to do it. And then she agreed to do it. Like it was everyone had to go around and say, would they do the play while I cried? Like it was like a traumatizing. Jackson Gay was the director. It was like super nuts. But I know that play was an active, I'm going to do something with how you've made me feel. And so it was a specific thing, and then I made them feel. Like, I know that sort of happened. Like, I don't think the play is really perfect, but the play, I had never watched so many people were sobbing and like...
But were they aware that this was an action?
No. That was just my like homework assignment.
And that's how it was sort of...
Yeah, I mean, it was literally, I had to do a play, and this was the play that I wrote. I feel like the liberal part of it was that it was actually too big of a play to do, but because it was so important, quote marks, the faculty let this production that was a mess, like that was way too big, that was a 3-hour play, they let us do it, as opposed to sort of going, maybe you shouldn't do this huge play.
Right.
Because I think they were afraid to say no to the black play. So, and there was a sense of importance that was sort of, I think, is very annoying about anything that sort of deals with race, that suddenly there's like a preciousness of importance of the material that you don't project onto other plays.
Do you think that play works today?
I think the play could work if I worked on it more. I think we did a thing at the Drama League after grad school where I was sort of playing with turning it into a musical, which, because there's a lot of songs, it's like a song with play, and very sort of creepy. I won't even tell you I'm not gonna even say the name of that song. So it's like so the songs are kind of like also kind of cutting too.
Yeah.
So it was I actually think it totally works, and then I just lost the urgency to work on a ginormous play that felt impossible at the time for anyone to produce. Like, who's going to do my 12-person play in blackface and whiteface?
Right, yeah. It's a play the size of something the regional theater would do, but certainly not with regards to content.
Yes,
yeah.
Only if the public did it, would anyone sort of be like, oh, that's a play that we could do. So
then, can you sort of draw a line or a dotted line from that play to Etymology of Bird, to Sick, to Where You Are, and then to How to Be a Free Man? Yeah.
I don't know. That's like weird. I don't think I can draw any lines, actually. I think what I can say is structurally, I get better as a writer. I know what I'm doing. Structurally, I can speak about the work in a different kind of a way. It maybe goes from more emotional feeling of I don't know why I'm writing this, but I just need to write it, to being a very specific, I'm going to write this specific thing to do this specific goal. So probably that's the way that I've developed as a writer. Before it was a little messier, and I just had to fight my way out of it. And I knew that there was something important, but I just had to find it. And then I wouldn't be able to talk about it in quite the same way. And now I can sort of go, like, How to Raise a Free Man is about these 3 things. Like, that's what it's about. There's not an emotional conversation that I have to spin around to figure it out. I can be very clear with why I'm writing it and what the intention is.
So what are those 3 things for that play?
That play is about a middle-class black family who have a teenage black son. They live a little outside of the city, and they are both freaking out because of what's happening in the world about what it means to raise him. And they're coming at it from different perspectives. And at the same time, the teenage black son is a gamer and has no interest in any of the political world and the machinations that his parents are freaked out by, because he's a privileged kid that this doesn't necessarily affect him, or he doesn't think it will. So it's really, I think it's more of I try to make a sort of version of a well-made play to a certain extent, middle-class sort of story, middle-class characters, that we're dealing with content that you don't ever see middle-class characters talking about in America on stage.
Yeah, it's true. Is this the first production of that play?
This is the first production, and it's a really early play. I think and we only had a few workshops of it so far. So it's super fresh and it's super relevant. I think I didn't plan to do this play at this particular time with this company, but the urgency of the play made me think that I should just agree to it. Because it's sort of one of those conversations that I think that I would like to be having more of. And, I think for me, a lot of the reasons why I write or what I keep in my mind is how rarely I still see characters that look anything like me. And I guess what I really mean by that is I never see anybody who isn't struggling, who's black, on stage, who's like, life isn't extra hard. So they don't look like the middle-class stories of whiteness where you just get to be a person. There's another loaded projection onto them where you're like, and my father left, and I'm like on WIC checks or something, right? And I'm in the hood, but not like, our relationship broke up. What am I going to do now? Like, that's not a colored story. That's a story of whiteness.
Yeah, it's true. It reminds me of a conversation I had and I think it was on the mic here in this room, with Carla, who talked about the 2 kids who blow shit up.
Yeah. Really great example of that, actually. Yeah. I've never seen Asian characters ever in my history of, I've watched plays since I was a child. I've never seen 2 Asian characters have a relationship on stage that was like a multi-dimensional relationship, except for Ray Pamatmat's plays. But that, in a general sense, those characters, I've never seen those characters ever portrayed except if they were white. I've never seen those, and those characters were not, it's a good play, but those characters aren't sort of like crazy characters. They're very sort of neutral. You know who those people are. It's a relationship between almost a brother-sister kind of, friendship developing. That could be anybody, but that's always white people.
Right, yeah.
Anytime it could be anybody, that means it's white.
Yeah, no, it's true. It's true. It always, and this is something I've started to lock into, maybe like, and this might be really embarrassing to admit, like 6 years ago, I started to lock into in my own writing, if the race of a character, the ethnicity of a character isn't part of the story, being explicit in writing that character and the character description, to be clear about that.
Yeah.
So that doesn't default white.
Well, yeah, I mean, I have a lot of thoughts on this, so I won't bog you down too much.
You can. I don't. It's fine with you if you contradict me.
No, I'm not contradicting.
It's important for me that being a white privileged cisgendered male, that my plays aren't seen that way when that's not what the story is. And it's important for me that some of the stories that I'm telling, some of them are about me and my family, and they're Polish people from Poland, and those people are all white. Yeah. But then there are a lot of plays where it's like the story that we're talking about, the two kids that blow shit up. It's like it's relationships, and they can be anybody. Yep. And so I want there to be an openness to it, to be picking the actor based on the human being they can portray.
You know, Sheila Callahan and I actually had a long conversation about this a few weeks ago, on a lot of different levels. It's sort of the thing that infuriates me the most about theater right now is that this kind of conversation isn't happening for like white playwrights as a necessity. Mm-hmm. Because I can understand a world where the dynamics aren't going to change next year, right? Mm-hmm. We're not going to have a completely diverse theater schedule. We're not going to have gender parity next year, right? So, granted, I kind of understand this. I think it's like a long process. I get that. But the idea that if 75% of the writers that you're producing are white, that's what your acting pool looks like, is completely, I think, a symptom of white supremacy that is unconscious. It's so unconscious, because the thing that happens to me as an audience member is what will often happen to me is I'm the only black person in the audience in New York. Mm-hmm. So I'm not even, in New York City, in Manhattan. I could often be the only person of color. Then you can have a play that isn't about whiteness, but everybody is white. Mm-hmm. And there is no conversation at all. And then what will happen is they'll do one black play or one person of color, and that is a play about the struggle of overcoming the difficulties of what it's, you're somewhere, you don't have any money, or you're historic characters, or you're slaves, or you're in Africa. Those are the stories. Those are generally the stories. And the stories are often about poverty and overcoming the obstacle of being you. So, okay, given that, because those are some plays. Those are necessary stories, so I can't say that. But if that's your only relationship to people of color for your season, a few years ago when I was here, CTG, the only plays they had that had black people were set in the past. So it was like August Wilson, there was Fela, and there was Marco Ramirez's really great play, but it also was in the past. Right. And I was like, all your black stories, there's no black people in 2000 now. All your black people are like from the past. And I told someone who's associated with that theater, and they were like, well, what do you expect? It's regional theater. And I was like, I'm not even saying change the plays. Do the same plays. Do Little Dog Laughed. Yeah. Why can't there be a person of color in The Little Dog Laughed? It's not about race. It's about acting. And I think that default casting, it's what I would say, what I'm encouraging now, especially for white writers, is I think it's not enough to say it's like the default thing, because here's what's going to happen. So you're like, it can be open to everyone, right? Like it's raceless. That means I'm open to all casting. So then what happens is this. So then a casting director's like, oh, well, that's okay. Let me try to find some people of color. Then you get those people of color who have been trained in August Wilson historically, because that's how they've worked. And you tell them to do Annie Baker. They don't know how to do Annie Baker because they've only had a tremble in their voice as an August Wilson character. They have no idea what to do with non-naturalism. And you're like, they're not right. This audition didn't work. We wanted to cast people of color, but now we're just going to have to go to the default white because we just didn't find that person. That is what happens. Like, it's the default. That's what I was talking about with Sheila. Yeah. Like, it's not that you're not like, oh, I want that to happen, but then you're like, oh, but that wasn't a good audition.
So let's say, and this is completely hypothetical. Yeah. Let's say I have a theater of my own. Let's say I'm an artistic director. I have my own theater, and we just had this conversation. And I'm like, holy shit, you're completely right. Yeah. I keep auditioning black actors for these highly stylistic, theatrical.
And not all black actors.
Right. Right. No, I know it's so hard. Right. It's so hard to have these conversations, isn't it? Yeah. But basically, I'm using what you just set up. Yeah. Using what you just set up and saying, I would like to do something to change that. Yeah. I would like to create an acting program or acting class, or maybe a series of acting classes that are based in style, non-naturalism. Because I want to swing the pendulum.
I mean,
right?
that's the answer.
And I want to, but then do you have a class that says, "Dear Black people, dear Black actors, come to this class. White people don't apply." Because what if you start this class and then you just fills up with white people who want to?
I mean, I probably
also
wouldn't teach that class. Like, probably what I would do instead is sort of go, so there's this Black actress that I really like that I know has been good historically, right? I'm a person who auditions people, and I know people in Los Angeles. I don't, obviously. And I go, so she was really good in that piece, and she's not getting the language here. I go, maybe the audition isn't giving me the full answer, and then we got to let her do some more work. Maybe it's relying on the confidence of knowing the actor and knowing that someone is a good actor and going, even though they didn't nail it, maybe they've not been experienced to this language, and I got to get them in the room and I got to work with them and I got to teach it to them. So I think it's being a little bit more open that if there are 7 people who do this work normally, and that's why they've been proficiently trained, that maybe it's a different language. So you will have to maybe think about casting differently. One of the ways that I think this in New York would be super helpful is if things, to take the pressure off of casting, if casting kind of had to be like the way it looks in your city or something, right? Where like, maybe we just need to make this really, to take all the emotional biases out of it and sort of go, okay, so Los Angeles is this much Latino, it's this much Asian, it's this. So if I'm having a play that's set up in Los Angeles, I should make sure that the demographics match the city. That might be a way to sort of go, all right, so no matter what, we have to get an Asian actress. We'll have to find it because we can't do the play. What we've set up for ourselves is we need an Asian actress. That's it. Like, that's what it is. So you can't go to a default white person. But it's also really fighting for that. It's also sort of going, the best person, one of the best white playwrights I know who's really effective at this is Adam Bach, who really makes it part of the world that he's living in and the world that he's writing in, and he really makes it his responsibility to make sure the casting is that. So I think it happens. I guess my little rub wasn't on the making sure writing it in the notes. I think it's the follow through of going, no, we won't do the play. The play, we're not. Then we'll have to find them, or we can't do the play. Like it's sort of a little bit fighting for it as a social. And I do think there need to be plays where it's about whiteness, but now what I want is for people to just start discussing whiteness. It's white on purpose. These characters are white. That's valid. I do not want there to be only people of color stories by only people of color.
Right.
What I want is for you to know what makes white. And that's the character. And, of course, the Polish character, but it could be a middle-class white person. As long as you're specific and you know. It's sort of like when Girls came out, and I wished Lena Dunham had said, these girls are white. These girls are white, and they don't know people of color. That's the world that I'm writing about. What she said was something like she didn't realize it, which meant it wasn't conscious to me, which means a default.
Yeah.
But it is not a default if you're like, these girls are white.
Yeah.
They're white middle-class girls who don't know any other people. That's how they grew up. You can own that. That is not a negative thing. That is not a hostile act. It's hostile to say these girls represent everyone.
It is. It's scary for people to realize their deficiencies, and it creates anxiety when you suddenly and you may not ever be able to admit it, but it's scary when you're like, holy shit, I've been living all of these years with a certain way of thinking, and I've been wrong, or I've been closed.
Someone said, like, I think I read somewhere that white supremacy is the water. And so we can't help but be wet. It's not like you're a bad person. This is how we've all been raised. Someone I work with in a weird way asked me, I was talking about some television show, Atlanta. I was talking about Atlanta, how good Atlanta is. And he was like, he's white, and he was like, will I get Atlanta? And I was like, I got all the white shows for my whole life, like forever.
Wow. Well, you know what? I don't even know what to say to that. Like, well, I get it.
I know. Well, the other thing that often white cis male playwrights often have said to me when I've had this conversation is also like, I'm very afraid to write a person of color. And I often go, well, why would you have to? I actually am super uncomfortable if you try to write Tanisha out of the blue. like I'm gonna just write Tanisha and try to write Tanisha from like the hood. Maybe you shouldn't do that, and unless you know Tanisha from the hood, right? Danny Hawk might know Tanisha from the hood.
Sure.
Seth V. Rosenfeld might know Tanisha from the hood. But if you don't know Tanisha, that's not what I'm saying. I think instead what I'm sort of saying is you don't have to write anyone differently than what you're writing. You don't have to do any work. You just have to be conscious about it. Mm-hmm. So it's no, like, you don't have to change anything, which is literally what someone said. All the times I try to write black characters, they come out fake. And I was like, what's the difference between me and your white characters? Mm-hmm. Like, why? What are you projecting onto your people of color that makes them so different from, like, the person you're talking to? Mm-hmm. Couldn't I be the same character that you're writing? Mm-hmm. I mean, not always, but sometimes. Isn't that all that you mean? And that you're just not thinking about it in this way. So it's I keep going, there's nothing that makes me more angry right now than an all-white theater season. And the uncreativeness of that, the uncreativeness of doing old plays and then doing them in the exact same ways, right? I'm not even necessarily that excited about the seasons, but I'm like, but there's things that you could do to make this contemporary. If you're going to do The Curse of the Starving Class, maybe you should think about casting that differently. If you're going to do Love Letters, maybe you should cast that differently. Mm-hmm. Maybe you should just begin to think about this. Or are you literally saying in your fantasies you only want white people? This is the world that you actually, it's theater is all fake. What you're kind of saying is this is your ideal. Mm-hmm. You've created it on the stage. And what I think you're saying then is there's no room for me in your fantasy.
Do you feel the pendulum swinging at all?
No.
I mean,
Not in terms of that, no. Not at all. I think we're in a very kind of polarized place in terms of theater right now, and race. Me and Sheila talked about kind of all this stuff, but one of the things I always say is there's like one crowned black person and one crowned black man and woman who are the black playwrights.
At a time.
Mm-hmm. And there will only be one, and then there'll sometimes be an old one. That was like the legend one, right? There's a couple of those that are like, they're not
Emeritus.
going away. Yeah. And then there'll be a couple newly crowned people. And then the question is, how long do those newly crowned people get to work? Mm-hmm. And I'd say it's the same for everybody, right? Like there's only a couple of crowned white women that are writing, and then there's conjectures on white female playwriting too, where I feel like if I was a white woman, I feel like I have to write some small play in some small world, some small characters. Mm-hmm. That's like a trope. That's like a very producible trope right now for what we look for in like white new woman's work, right? That's being actively produced. And then I think the most crowned working people are some white men. But there's even less crowns for Asian people, right? There's like, is there, David Henry Wong never gave that crown up. There's not really.
Yeah. I mean, can't we all have crowns?
We all can't have crowns, but I do think right now it's very, like, these are the people that you're seeing constantly on the seasons.
Yeah.
So it's less about the crownedness. I think I felt like when I first started writing, there were more opportunities for people to have, like, a few productions. Even if it wasn't a crowned thing, you would work every 5 or 6 years. Mm-hmm. And now it feels like it's very on the nose right now that if you have been crowned, you'll be on somebody's season every year, because especially if you make it as the black or Latino one, you're the only one.
Yeah.
So you've definitely got that slot.
Yeah, and going back to what you were saying about, you were just writing plays.
Yeah.
And then somebody.
Yeah, I think the naivete.
Somebody changed the conversation.
The conversation was fully different because I also think because I was such a young person writing, I really thought the best work was the work that you would always be seeing. Mm-hmm. So I think the realization that there's more politics behind production is probably, I'm glad I didn't realize it because I don't know what would have given me motivation to sort of stay in this sort of industry and sort of know that it was bigger than a production anyway, that it was a bigger life choice than just what was on the stage. But I definitely always thought, oh, what you're going to see is the best work. Like that's what the producers are picking. Like they're like, oh, and then to find such mediocrity on a regular basis, and a sort of a lack of theatricality and all the sort of political things that can also connect to a production, you know, I guess that's important to know, but I'm glad I didn't know it until I had already committed to a certain extent. I'm glad there was the bait and switch happened to me later. I was like, oh, also things aren't fair.
Yeah.
It's still just life. Like it's not actually some weird contest where people actually win.
Yeah.
And I think what I often think is how many amazing playwrights, like Audrey Kennedy, never really got any kind of shine at all. Never really kind of gotten seen on a. Audrey always says that she's produced more in colleges, and like she resigned herself to that.
I was introduced to her as a grad student.
Yeah. We had this weird email relationship for a while, and that's kind of what she said. And she said, though, I think she's always felt like a little annoyed by it because her contemporaries were like Edward Albee, and she was in the room with them, and she inspired so many people, and so many people took her style and like ran with it, like Susan Laurie Parks, but just that she's still not on the canon. She's on the academic canon,
Right.
and I think I feel so drawn to her because I feel like that's like the fear.
Yeah.
The fear is like, wait, is it only going to be sophomores in college who are reading my work? Oh, okay. Sophomores are great.
If that's the fear, what is the dream?
I guess the dream is just to work, right? Like the dream is work. The dream is having spaces to come into where people let you play. The dream is to feel like the work is necessary and that people want to do it and will go through hurdles to sort of make it happen. And I can't say I'm not, like I'm doing this piece and then I'm going to go to Minneapolis, to Penumbra to work on a musical. So I feel like it's keeping yourself fed and sustained for whatever that sort of means that allows you to come back to this work again and again. So I think it's really about feeding yourself. I think that's how I can continue on here if I feel like, oh, this is necessary. And this is necessary. I always think playwriting's necessary later. It's not really necessary now. It's really necessary when I'm dead, probably. That's probably when all my work will be really important. I'm not positive.
Yeah. Well, that's the downest up note or the uppest down note that we could possibly end on. I kind of like it because in ways, if that happens, we're sad to see you go, but look what you've left us.
Well, but that is what it is. If you think about
right?
it, all the plays that really are impactful, it's the play, it's not the person. So you don't need the playwright to be here. I always feel that's like Sarah Kane. If Sarah Kane had not died, had not killed herself, there's no way people would be producing her plays like this. There's no way. Her death made us go, oh, she's important. We missed that. Let's do it now.
Yeah.
So I always say the best thing you can do for your playwriting career is an early tragic death.
Oh, I've
Pulitzers everywhere.
It's
Posthumously.
I'm struggling. I'm struggling to hold on to something like optimistic, and we're in such a downward spiral. I don't mean like us in this room.
Yeah.
But we're coming to the end of our conversation, and it's just really fucking hard, And I keep trying to think, what's that little positive?
I don't think that.
And I'm not sure. I'm not sure it exists.
I think our job is to not stop. And I don't think it's enjoyable. I don't think it's like a fun time. I don't think it's humorous. But I think our job right now is to keep working and to know that there is a reason for the voice, even if it's not the present moment. And I think it's really important to not let the politics interfere too much with the creativity. So at a certain point, you got to turn it off. I mean, I had to leave Facebook for 2 months. Like, I think you have to turn it off in order to get back inside. I think we have to go into protective mode. There's a lot going on, and we can't suck it all up.
I think that's a bit of advice that I could take right now.
Yeah. Self-preservation.
Well, thank you for doing this.
You're
I
welcome.
appreciate it. This was a really great conversation.
It was good.
All right, the end. Thank you to Zakiyyah Alexander for coming in today. Her play, How to Raise a Free Man, is being produced in LA by Ammunition Theater Company. It opens March 3rd at the New Collective. Go to ammotheater.com for tickets and info. That's ammo, A-M-M-O, and theater with an R-E.com. Thank you to Danny Oliver at LA Stage Alliance for her all-around goodness and talent in making this podcast and the website thisstage.la. Go. Thank you to the generous contributions of Mr. Bill Bordy, who not only generously supports LA Stage Alliance, but also LA Theater in general. And a big thank you, as always, to Dave for recording us in this awesome studio. Check out jtbrecording.com if you need an awesome recording studio in Los Angeles. Alrighty, here we are at the end of another one. I feel 3% better than I did at the beginning. Hopefully I didn't depress anybody at the top of this episode. Let's move forward through the fog together. Next month, I will have Kellyanne Conway in the studio to talk about her new musical titled The Facts Are Alt-Right.